going to split this into two halves. I'll jump onto the PowerPoint in a second and just do the intro why we do strategy and roadmap and that kind of thing. And then I'll jump back into what's basically the summary, the overview of a community survey that set out there in the internet for probably about 6 weeks this year. We got 81 responses. What I emailed around, or not emailed, put on the Skype chat earlier today was the results from that survey with the personally identifying data removed from it. My summary here doesn't have that personally identifiable data removed from it, so that's why I'm starting at mid late.
Door prize winner?
Sorry?
Is there a lucky door prize winner?
You're here. And we'll go through that. And once I go through this, I'll break at that point rather than getting into the guts of the goal setting, the strategy discussion, who's going to do what, who wants to commit to what, so that you guys can stew on that amongst yourselves over lunch and come back having had a bit of a time to think about it. And hopefully that'll make for a quicker session this afternoon, smashing together the roadmap discussion with the commitments discussion. If everyone's kind of happy with that, because otherwise we're going to run out of time, I think. How do I make this to a display?
Slide presentation. No, it's a different one. Big button at the top right. Yeah, present.
Right,
yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so why do we do a roadmap? Why do we have a wrap up at the end of this kind of session? Basically, there's two reasons for this, and I'll go through this on the next slide as well. But basically, our community likes to know what we've got, what's coming, and we like to know what they need. So trying to pull all of that together and forming that roadmap, which is basically our commitment to our users, is important. It also puts together a bit of a stronger message to our partners that this isn't just a project that progresses haphazardly. There is actually some design and intent behind what we do. And hopefully over the last day and a half, the people in this room have kind of got a better feel for it. There is actually quite a lot of thought and design that goes into ArduPilot and the changes that are made, both with the hardware that's supported and the features in the software. Okay, so roadmap, what will fall out of this afternoon session and the next few weeks with probably Randy and myself and Tridge and a few other interested people pulling it together is just a plan. When we go through last year's roadmap, we'll see that we followed it sort of. Things happen that cause us to change that. So it is like any plan, it's subject to change, but what it does is give us some initial direction. So when we go through the roadmap, basically there's two outcomes. One is the product, the roadmap itself. That's what our partners see, that's what our users see, that's what ends up on our website, and that's the reference that we can continually go back to. The bigger benefit for this audience, the people in this room, is actually the process of actually thinking about what direction we want to take ArduPilot and what contribution we want to make to that. So today, this session is not so much about that outcome, that document that will end up in the website. It's about the process and about designing that product. Okay, so I've sent out this link to everyone on the Skype chat today. That Skype chat, that link has only gone out to those in this room unless you pass it on to someone else, which I assume has happened. So that spreadsheet, that data, there's a lot of useful data in there. We're not going to touch on very much of it at all, apart from some key pull-outs. That survey this year was far more detailed than last year's. Last year's had half a dozen questions or so. This year we had a derivation of that same question set, plus a lot more specifics to try to get more information that we can share with the partners and the developers to shape what people are doing and try to focus on the right areas where we can, and also identify where particular rub points with our users are. 81 responses, that's about 30% more than we had last year. I'd hoped for more responses. We left the survey out for quite a lot longer than we did last year. But basically, after about 2 weeks, even after we reminded people that it was out there, we didn't get a lot more responses. So the 2 weeks we had last year versus the 6 weeks this year didn't generate 3 times the responses. So perhaps we can advertise a bit better next year. Perhaps we can push it into the partners a bit more to get some more responses. But 81 is a good number. And we'll see in the mix of responses, it does give us a spread of opinions, a spread of users, and a spread of how different people are using ArduPilot. This is just a breakdown of the people that responded. So quite a big mix. A lot of people have ticked all the one box, which we kind of expect, because a lot of users and partners are also developers. A lot of hardware vendors are also software developers, for instance, in the case of Hex, or in Aeon Robotics. A lot of our partners straddle more than one area here. And a lot of the dev team members are, will slot into some of those other categories as well. So it adds up to a lot more than 100%. The 2 key things to pull out of this: one, it wasn't just a dev team member survey, which is really good. So of the 45 people in this room, only a third of you responded to the survey. But our split between hobby user and professional user is quite noting. So that it's near enough to a 50-50 split for the people that actually fly or use the product, fly, drive, sail, float, etc. It's pretty much 50-50, and that's a pretty useful statistic, I think, about the features we focus on, the boards we focus on, and that kind of thing. Right, so the 4 key areas out of that survey I'm going to focus on, just to think on over lunch: strengths, weaknesses, what we're focusing on that we shouldn't, and what people want us to focus on that we aren't. So the rest of the data you can read that spreadsheet that you've all got the link to and talk about over lunch. But just those 4 key things to say what our users think of what we're doing in the positive and the negative. So what we're going to do now is sit down in groups.
Basically, it's got stuff on it.
The role that you
it's
play
got 4
in the
videos. The other ones are coming.
And what I want each of those groups to sit down and think about is
You've got to put that in your laptop.
basically the top couple of questions that we just went through from the survey. Things you think ArduPilot is focusing on that it shouldn't. Things you think ArduPilot is doing well. And then 3 things that you think we should do over the next 12 months. So basically within those 4 groups, basically a list of 9 items, 3 things we're doing well, 3 things we aren't, 3 things we want to do in the next 12 months. There should be pens and papers on every desk. So
Are we going to get into groups,
Yeah.
change desks?
yeah, so what we need people to do is basically the 4 corners of this room representing these 4 different groups. So hardware guys, can come up here because there's a whiteboard, you might need it. So those people that are basically in the hardware side of the ArduPilot ecosystem, so for instance, Yanni, Phil, Gene, perhaps some others. Just sit down and go through those 9 questions. Now, with the software employee versus software freelance, hobby, part-time, some of you span that full spectrum, depending which hour of the day it is. So make up your own decision about where you want to be, and we need to balance numbers across those groups. The reason I split them up is because the hobby/freelancers tend to have a bit more freedom about what they want to do, whereas the guys that are actually employed by someone will probably have some external direction or some different priorities rather than just what's fun and interesting.
They should bring their backlog of what they've been popular with.
Exactly right. So that's why I've split them up, because there are different priorities and different ways people think in those with those different roles. But because of how this team works, obviously people are spread across both of them. So make up your own mind and try to make those 2 groups relatively balanced if we can. And the 4th group, users, integrators, partners. So Ken, that's probably where you fit in, and Yarks. Yep. So people like you that are more into getting this stuff and fielding it and using it, again, have a very different perspective amongst those who are sort of more in the background and don't necessarily have the rubber hitting the road quite so much. Right, so hardware, users, and the software guys in the 2 corners, and obviously the 2 software groups, try to make those 2 relatively balanced. So we can relocate ourselves now, that'd be good.
Which one, software employee was which corner was which?
I'll put the freelancers with the coffee because it's safer that way. And the employees in the yeah. Right, so what we're going to do for this next little phase is two things. Basically, we're going to look back and see whether the things we've identified there is what we're doing well, not doing well, and should do this year, we've already identified within our roadmap from last year, which is this link. Because basically we went through this process 12 months ago, and what comes out of this is both the statement of where we're going as a group, as the ArduPilot project, and also putting names to tasks so people actually know who's doing what, and hopefully we'll remember to do that, and it also gives us a mechanism to review what we said we're going to do, what we've actually achieved in 12 months' time. And I can't do two screens, split screen. So if we work through this just quickly while we're still typing stuff in, most of this we actually performed really, really well as a team in achieving most of the things that we said we're going to. When we look forward at the things we want to achieve this year or the things we're not doing well, we will find some of the things are the same. So Lua scripting. Well done, Michael. It's not there yet, but it's well done, Michael.
You take my name off it because I did bugger all.
Well done, Dredge. That's right. Hey, now it's your turn. That's right.
So I probably should start at the top there, but I just wanted to make Michael feel good about Lua. Hardware and iOS support. Basically, the things that Sid and Tridge achieved with the Chibios port over the last 12 months, I think pretty much everyone in this room knows was A, pretty incredible given the pace that it happened, and B, has achieved the intent of freeing up resources on the 427 and also enabling the full ArduPilot flight stack in the 405s, which really has lowered the barrier to entry for a lot of new users and made it easy to experiment and crash and all those sort of things. So that's a really massive effort from the team. It's a massive architectural shift. A lot of work that I think, I'm not sure the hardware guys will say, I haven't read it all yet, but they will probably like us to slow down and get a bit more robust over the next 12 months rather than that same rate of change. But it's been a really massive and significant effort. Software support for new CAN hardware. Tridge gave us a quick brief on that yesterday afternoon or this morning with AP Proof this morning.
This morning. Yep.
With the peripheral HAL.
Feels like yesterday.
So there has been work in that space, but I think that'll probably carry over into the next 12 months. I probably have to suggest that most of the EKF stuff is still...
We got some EKF2 support in for external nav, that's gone in, and all that, the multi-copter stuff, that hasn't happened.
Not in this flash second.
No.
Sorry?
There's been the theoretical mathematical work going on with the yaw estimator, and I've run some flight data through the algorithms and so on, so it's sitting there, but
So in plane, the VTOL control improvements has happened largely thanks to Mark Whitehorn and Ian Pete, and also some great support from Leonard and from Paul. So that has we've got dual airspeed, but we don't have good failover based on estimation, and we have it only based on the actual sense of dying. Yeah. And so we definitely need more on that. That's to do. It's quite important. The architecture update is very, very, very close. It was flown yesterday on 2 planes. Thank you very much to Tom for pushing on that, and I'm expecting that will be merged very soon, possibly before some of you get back home, but we'll see.
we not want to do the stable first?
So that architecture update is the onion for those that have heard of the onion.
Well, that's the start of the onion.
Yeah, that's right. The
Take
first
a while.
stage to make, but it's the big step.
Yeah.
Yeah. Deep stall accuracy improvements. Anything changed in the last year with the deep stall
I was the
accuracy?
one looking at that, but no, nothing's changed.
Right. Okay.
It really only affects you. No one else does it.
Yep. The other big one that's coming in play and that we didn't promise to do is the Q auto tune. That's been a very important one for VTOL planes. There's been a lot of VTOL improvements actually in the last year.
Or was it you can cue the auto tune just to
No Q auto tune.
It's the multi-modal auto tune.
Works out.
So in the transitioning vehicles, being able to auto tune it in both modes, basically.
Yeah.
We've still got a way to go to get that really to the flexibility it needs to be to fully support the various vehicles.
Yeah. Some of the tail setter stuff needs a bit more work.
And the flexibility to support flexible things.
Yeah. Yeah. Birds. Flapping wings.
This next section was really meant to be a multi-year thing, actually. We're just thinking the next 12 months. We never expected to get through all of the items on this in the next section. We've done some.
Yeah, so some significant ones really.
Yeah, definitely. Like the sports slam for Robbie Du Bois, we showed the video for that, I guess. That also, yeah, so we did that one. Helis have done.
Yeah, they've done a great job at bringing their stuff up to date, and we got all of the school logic in.
The school logic is not in, but it's getting very close.
Right, so
Final stages.
yeah, we're right at the precipice with spool logic going in that fully supports what the helis need to spool, increase the RPM, like spool up and spool down while still being able to actuate. So once you shut down, you've still got a lot of energy in the rotor head, and so that carries on through a whole heap of different types of vehicles as well. So that and that combined with a lot of the program changes really allowed Heli to bring a lot of the motor mixer stage of their work up to speed. So it's been that's well and truly to the almost ticking a box there.
Yeah, some of the rest of this stuff, as Randy said, is
Yeah.
quite low down and
The heli work, by the way, was done by Bill Guy, right?
Yeah, Bill and
Yeah.
Chris, but
Yeah.
mainly Bill.
The fast loop rates, I've demonstrated fast loop rates on some boards. There's a PR pending that makes them much easier, and I've seen, sort of 1200 hertz sort of thing. We haven't got to 4 kilohertz. That needs some larger changes. But Leonard and I have spent many enjoyable evenings discussing
Yeah.
how we're going to do those things, but not implemented the really core stuff to get 4 kilohertz plus. So yeah, I'd say that's not achieved, but on the way.
Yeah, a long way towards
Yeah.
it.
Follow mode, we do have follow, we demonstrated that, follow and even, touch and go between two aircraft.
Yeah.
What was the when when the lead plane would turn and the follower would just zip off, would keep
It's
going in a straight line?
Mostly that the Wi-Fi link to the plane was rather dodgy, and so it was doing propagation and prediction of what the plane was going to be doing with the lag, and when the plane didn't feel it was predicted and turned left, and the copter didn't know it had turned left for a bit of time, and then suddenly said, oh, it's gone over there. Ooh. So yeah, if we have
Control
aircraft to aircraft communication directly, that sort of thing gets a lot tighter.
Which means a flight access point.
okay.
So standby mode, I haven't done that yet. The spool status handling is part of the what I was talking before about the support of the heli and what the heli guys have done. Attitude controller, we still haven't changed the feed forward states in the motor mixers. There's a few changes there. Rate update rate's good. There's a few things that have sort of partially been done or are in those sections being done. SI units is a big one that hasn't been done. The position controller, I've done the XY but not the Z. There's some of those things have been done in some levels but not in others. The big one there, the EKF reset being handled correctly, that actually happens now. So now the big problem there was when the EKF reset from one to the other had a different attitude. and so the aircraft saw a discontinuity now. But we actually, when the EKF looks, we actually maintain the errors from one state to another, and so you get zero twitch now. Like when you get a takeoff and a change in your heading, if you've got a roll and pitch change as well there a little bit, you would actually get a twitch. Navigation, that supports new position control, but everybody saw what I'd like to move to with full feed forward type architecture. The loiter has been rewritten for full feed forward. Auto tune, it's handling large aircraft reasonably nicely. So there's a couple of issues. The auto tune is, except for the airframe specific and the helicopter, all told. Yeah, and so the first two have been done, the rest is still work in progress.
I did not know my name was on that. So.
Yep.
Please take it off it.
Well, at the time,
most of them are complete though, Grant.
Well done.
actually, they're all complete back away works now as well.
We'll be fine then, you know?
And I think that to include that covers the back away from objects there. What you did just
He's
there.
showing us the back.
Well, that actually works, I think, the back away.
Responsibility.
Yeah, so Evan, as part of GSOC did the first one there, the balance bots, of course.
Yep.
And the other two below have also been done, the loiter and pivot turn improvements are in there. Last one's not done.
Buzz has done the code coverage stuff. Now,
So the AP sync one, we Ian Cloud was interested in the Bassler camera, but not interested anymore, so I don't think we'll have to do that one. The second one's done. Oh no, the second one's not done. And the next one's also not done.
A lot of people actually do use it for 3D LT just because you can't get that out of the bottom of the monitor, so but not with the specialized hardware that inside.
One thing that isn't shown up clearly here is the actual volume of changes we've had in the last year has been quite extraordinary. We've had nearly 6,000 patches in the last year, and that doesn't include documentation changes. That's extra. And total in terms of code change, around 600,000 lines of code have changed in the last year, which is a lot of code for a group of our size. And I particularly like to call out the structural improvements that Peter's been doing. Peter's been doing an extraordinary range of structural improvements which enables a lot of the other work and makes it easier. Moving code into common in particular. Getting moving code out of the individual vehicles where historically it was easier to just throw a feature into rover or into a copter or into plane. Moving it up to common codes, we have commonality between vehicle types, and improving the overall code structure so it makes more sense, it's more cohesive. That has been the, I think, highlight of the last year. It doesn't appear on, wish lists and things, but as far as creating a great coding base to then, build upon, it's been the big thing of the year. So I think Peter deserves a round of applause for that.
And also congratulations on creating more branches than anybody else.
Sorry?
Which trends us towards a single binary.
Yeah, that old chestnut.
I just heard Randy say yeah.
Yeah, so there have been some improvements on the developer wiki, especially in the ROS area in particular, and also some of the developer wiki, for example, like the hardware definition, the ChibiOS stuff, and there's also a section, an improving section on the Mavlink interface. We're trying to introduce our Mavlink interface, which is not complete in Mavlink. Not every message works just once. But anyway, we're improving the Mavlink interface section as well.
Right. Quick one on AP telemetry. Again, that's something that Peter's been doing. We didn't end up doing it in the way that was discussed last year. It's basically an extension to GCS Mavlink.
If you rename GCS to telemetry, you pretty much get that.
There's been a bunch of work done there by Peter to pull the FR Sky and the Devo telemetry in with the Mavlink telemetry and commonise that as much as they can.
Yeah.
Just digital safe is meant to be battery stuff. That's in.
Right,
Yeah, the battery restructuring has been
Yeah,
that's been great. It's a really good improvement. Great, appreciate Mike's all your effort on battery stuff.
Right, so that's just a quick overview of, I guess, the outcome from this discussion 12 months ago that was evolved through the year. I mean, Randy put a bunch of effort into putting this together and I guess putting his own task list on the internet for everyone to see and critique. So let's see what people just finished writing in here.
Can I read comments?
Sorry?
Oh, sorry, as we go down.
Yeah, I'll read them out. Plus the text message one, I still haven't put in.
Join a text message contact us for my computer.
Yeah, if you can.
Yep.
Or if you just jump on the link that's in the Skype, you could cut and paste it in, because that's all I'm going to do is cut and paste it in via Skype. So with the context of what our user feedback has been, the things that I sent the link around this morning and we talked about before lunch, the discussion you guys have just had amongst yourselves about what we think we're doing well, what we could do better, what we should do this year, and looking back at the outcome of that same discussion 12 months ago, I'm hoping we've kind of put ourselves in a frame of mind to look at this and in the same way we did last year, commit ourselves to particular things, both as individuals and as a team. We'll do that by going through this list and basically I'll just bold those things that as a group we think are important and want to commit to. I'm not going to delete anything off this list. I'll leave it there for history's sake and later discussion, but we'll just bold those things that we think are important. And that's probably where we're going to end up today, because I think that's, Tridge and Randy probably want to do a wrap up and we're already way over time. Right, so what we're doing well, we're supporting lots of vehicle types and lots of hardware. That's a good thing. Few flight terminating bugs. I don't know whether we have the data to support that, but I hope it's true.
Few is good.
Few is good.
Better than many.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the point, right? Very low bug count.
Yeah. Chibios, we've already discussed Chibios. That was a massive achievement throughout the last 12 months. So well done to all those involved in that.
Says it was easy.
Well, it makes things easier now. The hardware dev.dat and the per manufacturer bootloaders making it easy for the partners to identify their own devices rather than coming up as ST Micro or some other project.
Robotics.
Yeah. Multi EKF, EKF per IMU. That's not new, but it is.
It's not about what's new, it's finally implementable. It hasn't been implementable before Chibios in a cube. It's having 3 IMUs has been one of the great features we designed in, couldn't use it. So Chibios is actually there, we can finally do it.
Yeah, specifically. Auto probe, you've put that in 2 columns.
Yes, we love it and hate it. Nothing worse than you go out to the flying field and something is wrong, something's disconnected and the thing goes, oh that's right, I'll use this compass. We hate that bit, but when you're first setting things up, it's really handy to know what's what. So it's really good, that bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think we should do automatic sensor reordering based on the calibration dev IDs.
Yeah, sort of what we've been thinking about on that is actually having something where we can actually probe for every sensor, because at the moment we only look for like 3 compasses and we stop looking and things like that. Because it's highlighted a bit more now because obviously compass comes up last. So if you've got here 2 on serial and then you've got 1 on CAN bus, but you want to use the CAN bus one, then one in register. So things like that, but you lose one of them and all of a sudden you've got a whole different 3 sets of compasses and that can be a bit confusing. So there's pros and cons in that.
Failure handling, companion computers and airspeed. Airspeed was briefly discussed before. That is something that we also raised 12 months ago.
Yeah, from a hardware point of view, the reason that we raise it is it's the same chicken and egg thing. The reason we haven't actually released the airspeed sensor is we don't want to be associated with airspeed sensors, but we recommend people use them. So there's a bit of a chicken and egg thing because we know they fail and the failure modes are not fun. So we don't want our hardware causing crashes. So we let other people start with that.
Publishing that video.
With companion computer failures, there is a new Mavlink API that we haven't implemented yet that is in common, I think, as a WIP, work in progress message, that is meant to enable that discovery a bit better than it currently does on a per process level rather than just identifying whether the link's up or down.
I think we should set up a group. I think we need to set up a group to discuss if there's been an issue, set up what the requirements are, and then we come up with some of what the algorithms are.
Yeah.
Because it's going to take about 2 or 3 of us in different places to pull the threads together. It needs to be like a system level approach.
It is, because it affects everything.
There's quite a long issue or PR sitting that's gone back and forth a couple of times. I think, Chris, you actually implemented part of that.
Yeah, I started to work on it, yeah. So
First
once
easy
it's a
step.
basic airspeed check, it's very basic. But yeah, I'd like to help out with the next phase
I'd
of it.
love an airspeed query,
The first easy thing is to log the 2 synthetic airspeed estimates.
Yeah.
So we can compare them to the real ones.
Yeah.
Quad plane structure. I think that came from the guys down in the back corner. So just want to articulate that a little bit.
Okay, so if you have a look in plane/quad plane, and you start to follow through the scheduler table down through to the control loops where things happen. Sometimes something happens twice.
Yeah.
Sometimes we shove the demands into the function here, and then another part of the scheduler table we actually run them. And in other words, it is actually quite complex in terms of the way the dependencies with the loops.
It's a bolt-on.
Yeah, it's a bolt-on. Yeah, it was done to demonstrate a proof of concept.
Yeah. And then it got popular.
Yes.
Christmas 2014.
Yes.
Yeah. Unattended PRs, that's probably a two-way thing because sometimes people make a PR and just leave it there and don't respond to questions. So.
Well, I think if they don't respond to questions, we're not going to push ourselves. Then closing it is being responsible. Should be doing that.
GCS to allow flashing beta and bleeding edge. They all, both of the.
Make it easier.
Okay.
They already do.
Yeah, need to make it easier.
So what we're really saying there is something that's a bit more obvious than control Q.
Yep.
I think the thing is anyone in here should be able to fly master without even using mission planner ultimately.
Yeah.
So I don't feel giving that to the general public is a good idea. And that's
Just
why
on the stats out of the survey, and I won't go back through all of it, only 65% of the respondents to that survey fly stable.
Did you say only 65?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
but
actually,
you can't
but
use
then,
the word
but
only
then
and then
choosing.
50%.
Well, it's flight code, so.
Well, but if you normalize that versus commercial users, as a commercial user, I always fly something off. There's just 1 or 2 patches. So once you normalize that out, I'm curious where that goes for you.
Yep, so I actually didn't allow for your particular use case, as you know.
I'm not the only one in the room who does it though, which is why I brought it up.
Yeah. So, but you have your own stable release. It's not an ArduPilot stable.
Yeah.
It's your own fork, but that's what you're providing as a stable firmware to your customers.
Yeah, but it's not using stable images per the portal. So I think the number there is essentially lower than it really is
Okay.
for people who use those GCSs.
That's fair enough observation.
Michael's point, I'm guessing you made that statement, didn't think it's a good idea because you're trying to protect people's vehicles, protecting them from themselves.
Yes.
But I think as long as people understand the consequences, make that choice,
That's
a lot of the community,
Exactly.
a lot of the
You as a
community
user
are.
only need to know about control Q if you want to. You've already, to be flying master, there is a reason. You're in contact with the dev, or you're the dev yourself.
No, but
You need to know that. You need prior knowledge to create that state.
Something like the Shipping Skitter channel is this whole sub community of people, enthusiasts. They're not developers. but they're enthusiastic to try things. That has actually enormously benefited ArduPilot by pushing that and get people flying the bleeding edge because they enjoy it.
Yeah, but it also
Not
costs
because
us
they need
thousands
it.
and thousands of dollars because people fly bleeding edge because someone says, hey, just use Control Q and load that, it's better. Like,
Who's it cost money?
us,
You, as in
whole manufacturers.
Hex
like
you talking,
Hex,
or
whether it's
why does it
whether-
cost if they crash your hardware? Don't they buy more?
No, they send it back out of RMA. We lose heaps.
Really, when it crashes.
Yeah.
If they're crash on and they're choosing running master, that's their problem. I would have thought.
Prove
but-
it.
Yeah.
Like that's the problem. Like we actually want people to actually really
But
think.
it has
about
been a lot of
doing it.
features in the last year have come from that community shifting across from the culture of the Betaflight iNav worlds, who run a lot of them run the bleeding edge, and it's actually benefited us a lot in terms of features. Many of the features that have turned up in our tree have been from people with that mentality that they're in the hobby because they like being on the bleeding edge.
But those people have the ability to program and upload themselves without even.
And a lot of them don't. No, they don't.
They don't, but they have the ability to do Google search to how do I do this? How do I get involved in forum? How can I ask it on GitHub? I mean, how do I upload it? Everyone else knows control
I
GitHub.
provide a method to upload a custom firmware you provide.
Yeah.
And I do provide master behind a locked. If you find a keyboard shortcut, a locked door as such.
They're already asking us.
Yeah, I actually sided with Michael on this one. I think.
Exercise
But-
caution.
Yeah, but it sounds like it is a topic we can discuss a bit more.
So
Pre-flight
easy.
flight tests. So most of them in the room probably haven't been hands-on with the Google Wing project, but they have a daily built-in test where they just have a pre-programmed health check on their vehicles. Which is just a short orbit transitions in both directions, that kind of thing. That's not a bad idea. If we just provided users a suggested health check on their airframes, if someone wanted to take that work on.
Gosh,
Actually in the air.
No,
though.
actually in the air.
Oh, in the air.
Yes. It actually provides thrust in different directions, and it makes sure that everything's within expected range of, thrust, the sensors, etc. Yeah.
So it also checks sensors, make sure you haven't got unusually high current compass with the vehicle, blah 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 blah.
So just to be clear, we're wanting someone or some entity or facility to test multiple hardware platforms on multiple vehicles.
No, this is a facility to enable our mostly commercial users to have a automated pre-mission flight check where it actually flies for 30 seconds, right? But it deliberately checks it's the opposite of a normal flight. Normal flight, we are deliberately having as much redundancy as possible. If something fails, we try to keep going as best as possible. This one has the opposite mentality. If there are inconsistencies in that, it will fail you and take you down immediately, and won't clear you for flight operations on that vehicle.
So the
No, it's actually quadplanes this was for, but it applies to copters. Certainly, you can do it on rover.
Okay, so the example Paul gave earlier, where one of the EKFs was swapping being right, that would have been picked up in that check because one of the EKFs was failing in that initial flight, and it would have highlighted the problem.
So, the background of what Google do is that's because they're flying beyond line of sight, multiple vehicles per pilot, over a populated area.
I'd like to there's one thing that would significantly reduce some of those types of stuff out there in the series. It's just a requirement. I know you can't do it with large vehicles, but say just pick the vehicle up and we're asked to rotate it around 360 degrees and put it back down to the ground again.
Yep.
And we would immediately tell if the compass was
Yeah.
So that's
a pop-up
exactly the
flight.
sort of thing we could do with a large vehicle with that pre-flight check.
yes.
Yeah.
Just a daily check ride type thing.
Or with that post-flight pre-flight.
Parameters to SI units.
And if you read the comment, is it Louis? Asks why SI units versus aviation units. That's the comment.
not
Because
necessarily.
aviation units are still based in ancient times, and we want to move to modern times.
Yeah.
So we have this discussion every couple of months.
I was just making sure
Yeah,
everybody's coming
yeah,
on
thanks.
that.
But just for background, the maths it should all be in SI units.
Yep.
How it's presented to the user and to regulatory authorities, that can be done through the GUI, and you can just translate from one to the other at will. But trying to do the maths.
Right, I was
Yeah.
just pointing out what his comment was.
Yes, Louis.
Yeah, exactly.
He's trying to participate.
Yeah, man. The cloud service for uploading and linking and exploring logs. Again, that's a perennial one for us since we lost drone share a few years ago. And there has been
Has anyone tried the one?
plot.drone.de, yeah, and there's quite a few people in this room that.
It's great, it works well. Tridge and I have been talking with the developer about it as well. So
Yeah.
Can we integrate it into that proxy just to automate the upload log?
It automatics
Yes.
Opt-in.
It has to be opted.
Well, I mean, you
Yeah.
might demand it.
So one of the things with plot.drone, it's all JavaScript based in the browser, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
it does have an upload feature that's optional if you want to share the log with someone else, for example,
But that log then goes
to the server.
to them rather than to
You
us.
get a unique URL.
We
So
want
commercial
to, we
vendors.
want to have like that is a commercial site, right?
Yeah.
So they are getting all like the logs.
Yeah, and they're in Estonia.
And
Is that what you really mean?
We've discussed doing it, but also the same thing, where do we actually put, which server do we use where in the world and all that.
I think
There's a
if
lot of
ArduPilot
context involved, so-
can have its own server where the logs go, something like that would be.
Yeah.
The good thing about this one though is when you just drag your log in, it doesn't go to the server, it stays local to.
Unless you actively
So you actively choose to go.
choose to go.
Having logs again, even if they were de-identified somehow, whatever, would be really, really handy. It was great
Yeah,
information
well,
going.
plot.drone.e, however you want to say that, does actually obfuscate.
Does a bad job.
It doesn't do a very good job.
Yeah, but it
I
wouldn't
got
give
some
us-
real confusion. It was taking off from 250 meters underground and trying to work
And
out.
I doubt we get access to the whole lot of logs for doing analysis like we did with drone share.
We've been discussing that with him, and it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
So it's probably going to happen.
What we're hoping for is that he'd just open source it and we could just pull it in trade, but that's not where they're at as far as I know.
That'd be something I'd rather ArduPilot actually own that server.
Yeah.
You know, we've
Which has been
put our-
discussed.
We've put our
Yeah,
hands
yeah.
up many times to help sponsor that.
Docs
And
and drone kit, yeah, drone kit come down a bit. Docs stable firmware versus
This was about, apparently if you go, we were talking about,
Yeah.
if you go to the website now, the list of parameters is generated straight off master as opposed
Yeah,
to.
that's definitely should be
I mean,
fixed.
that's just one
It's
example,
a
obviously.
significant task to fix that, but it's
So-
a good one.
You want people to write docs about features that are on master in preparation for when they go out and think about how do you share those and how do
Yeah.
you publish.
and perhaps linking docs to merging pull requests. Pros and cons to that. Chicken and egg. What does chicken and egg mean?
that was hardware related.
Right.
So basically, like we're talking about with Canvas, we've been on that project for 6 years now. We've done so many paperweights for people's desks. And even though, like, I've got an Iris at home that flies on Canvas and it has done since 2014, but then some software changed here in Can and we're going to do this and then that was going to happen and blah, blah, blah. So it was never worth commercialising. So I suppose it's not something that's easy to fix like that, but it is something that it would be appreciated for the hardware side if you keep in mind that hardware does take a long time to get through the process. It takes a long time to get right. It takes even more time to get to the point that we're confident to send it out to the masses because our first lot of drones, cubes, we sent 1,000 out. I made a mistake. It's really expensive to fix. So there's no pushing up that process.
So is that sentence perhaps so that kind of leapfrogging thing of new hardware enabling software innovation?
Hardware driving software versus software driving hardware.
Is that kind of what you meant?
That's a chicken and egg thing too.
Are
Because
you asking for,
So that's
what are you asking? You're asking for the software to be respectful
It's when we say, hey, we've got hardware, do you want some? If people put their hands up to get it, you're actually committing to do some work on it. It's not decoration. That's probably a commitment.
So it's
No more paperweights.
No more paperweight.
So it's a
Paperweight's
freebies
a
issue.
really
It's doing your work for your freebie.
It's, well, there's no such thing as a freebie. You know, I mean,
Yeah, on the other side of that, knowing how much work it's going to be to get a piece of hardware to
That's
go,
right.
it's hard to know. Sometimes you think it's going to be an afternoon's work, you discover it's 4
it
months.
turns out 4 months.
Yeah.
And that's something we used to obviously do better because, you know, we used to be a bit more tight.
We're better at it now than we were at those estimates, but yeah.
You know, we used to try and make as minimal changes as possible for each hardware revision and stuff like that. We did sort of work together as a team, but I think some of that's sort of
And
fragmented at the moment.
with the ArduPilot, the actual flight control boards itself, I think that, as you've seen, the Chibios board has made, or particularly the
Yeah.
hardware def build system, has made that immensely easier.
Oh, absolutely.
Perhaps you could publicly declare who you sent stuff to as a shame.
We might want to do some stuff in the future though.
I don't know, there's a few people in this room that have CAN bus flow sensors that I think we flew for the first time yesterday,
Yep.
or the day before. They've been out there for about 2 years.
2 years, yeah. But that one there.
And I know Louis
we'll
nistling
take
in
full
with
responsibility
the
for that one.
stuff that I need to do on new telemetry protocols that I've promised.
And yeah, things from a hardware point of view, there's only one thing that we're all, I think, agreeing to work on next year. Getting all our hardware vendors to agree on something is an achievement, so can.
Yep.
Cool.
Right.
Have
Righto.
hardware vendors been asking for adding CAN support to all their
There's been a lot of hardware vendors working on CAN stuff for 6 years.
And there are actually some of the higher end users who are pretty much exclusively CAN, but it just hasn't infiltrated down into the broader ecosystem. Plain Onion, okay, so that's still there. That's a continuation from last year. And Tom's done a bunch of work and he's rebased it about 3 times, but it's now flying. It'll part 1B of that.
Yeah, that'll get in soon. The first stage that'll be in soon.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
Section.
I think it's stable before that.
Yep. Sorry.
I'm just advocating it's too stable before we play them, but I'd like to see us do the plain stable release before
Yeah.
the Onion. Might be the minority there again, afraid of change, but
Yeah, but
pretty worried about that one.
I suspect that there might be
Yeah,
some.
it's probably being split. I think just go as soon as possible because I think that there's a lot of developers like me who just won't have a really hard time making the adjustment to software playing. It's so different, and I think it'll open up a lot of doors to even existing developers.
It does, but I think it destabilizes for quite a long time after going in, which is why I'm saying do the stable first.
We can have that argument.
James?
Yep.
Could you actually keep it in sections? Because the answers make more sense if you know what they're related to.
Oh, so you've unlocked the top. Is
What's
that?
that?
No, I intentionally.
Hardware.
No, I intentionally didn't do that because I don't want people to be going that. It's on purpose.
Yeah, 'cause it just doesn't make sense.
Doesn't have to.
We know that the CAN is hardware people. That's
Yeah.
Can looks stupid, doesn't it?
Yeah, say CAN.
Very popular.
That's even better. 3 or 4
Yeah, that's
groups
right.
say CAN instead of just one group saying CAN.
No, I wanted you to come up with this tribally. I don't want it to exist as a document with the tribal separations in there. Well, I think I can guess who these ones are from. These are from our users, etc. Cool. Thanks for putting me in. Non-user friendly error message. So I'm guessing there's probably something to just to know about the error messages, and in that the strings that come across aren't necessarily what you see in the ground station, depending on what ground station it is. But I guess that's when you get like your pre-arm checks. That's,
Yeah. So that was saying things like instead of getting error Fox Echo 233, it's a case of give me a hey, we've got a GPS problem, recommended land, and also have some form of severity in there, land fast, something like that.
So I think
stabilize.
EKF unhealthy is kind of the common one that people criticise there because what does
yeah,
it?
because they just tell
Playing
you,
fast
but then
or
you go, well, what am I supposed to do?
You'll lose it.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, but if you tell the user there's a problem, probably the next bit should be
What to do about it.
what to do now, what to do next.
So,
Yeah.
when
Look,
you-
that's the suggestion
Yeah.
is over the top.
Suggestion first.
What about you?
But we haven't agreed on this, because I asked him to write my most recent manual, and everybody had different opinions about disparity and the land immediately versus as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So internally, we are inconsistent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was context.
Yeah, but even within the EPF,
Yeah.
if you get a red compass failure or GPS failure, that's not necessarily going to crash your aircraft, whereas something with the IMU will.
Yeah.
So like, if you're flying a copter and you see red, get it down quick, switch to a mode that's a non-position mode. If you're flying a plane and you get a red compass and it's already flying around stable, planes can fly the whole flight with it.
Yeah, exactly, but this is.
What's your question?
So it's-
That last little bit.
Just don't land.
Yeah, just don't, yeah.
Why didn't I think of that?
Discussion forums unfriendly. That's a pretty serious bit of feedback.
Yeah, we've got a bit of a grievance raised about that apparently. So the grievance is that there was a bit of help requested, and then the conversation headed south, and it headed to a fairly unfriendly or an abrupt response from
Okay.
someone. So I think there's a combination. We probably need to dilute that a little bit because, but these forums can turn ugly relatively quickly, depending on personalities involved. So it wasn't me.
We get a lot of trolls on the Facebook stuff, especially. The admins on there do a pretty good job, I think, of
Cleaning up.
sometimes jumping on it too soon. That's probably one of the worst things, is actually jumping on someone too soon and assuming they're a troll. That just upsets people, but they're actually normally pretty easy to appease and get back in. But it's, it is a complex thing because they're anonymous and blah 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 blah.
And it is a good reminder that when we are responding on the forums, even though you're responding as an individual, you are reflecting the group,
The community.
and the community as a whole. So
I mean, there's some of the stuff that I've just stopped answering people on. It's just turns into an attack every time. So like, I don't answer people on GPS questions anymore. I'm sorry, I know you're technically wrong, and I can show you why you're wrong, but you don't want to hear it because that conflicts with what you thought. So I'm done arguing with people there.
And that particular one is a very difficult one because he has actually really
It's not just him. I've had that
yeah.
3 or 4 times now, and I've learned to regret every time I answer GPS questions.
But that
So I'm sorry, but
that
I'm not answering them.
upsets everyone else because we actually want Michael to come in and answer those questions because he's actually got the knowledge, but he's not.
An FAQ, I think that's where.
Michael's
FAQ
last
type
statement
thing.
on GPS,
Yeah.
is the final document.
Yes.
I always had a good thing is people ask questions and like their response is someone pastes some wicked link. Like, here you go. No discussion, no wasting time. Just like, here's your answer, close it.
Yeah.
And anytime you use a discussion, that means we should probably create a link to a fact or what needs to be changed. Because if every answer can't be addressed with a wiki link of some sort, then we need to add to a documentation.
What is the official venue for support?
The discussion forums is primary, but it does depend support of what. When it's a bleeding edge like the PR, the latest flight board, the Shibio Skitter channel has been very good, right? With
The
interactive.
reason I ask is I was told the same thing.
Yeah.
And I use it, but I see most of the support being done on Facebook pages.
The Facebook, some people are just oriented towards Facebook, and so I do answer people on Facebook, but as soon as the discussion gets more than 2 or 3 messages, I ask them to redirect across. Once there's doing log analysis and things, please place it over here for, particularly Facebook doesn't archive well. So it doesn't really archive at all. So it's hopeless for long-term searchability. But
If you look at the top of the cube one, it actually has instructions to go to the wiki or cube file.
But Facebook is very accessible for certain people that live their life through Facebook. And it's actually opened up ArduPilot to that type of community of people, and it's worked well. So I think both have a place. It's just not good for the archived longer term discussions.
In a way dilutes things, because sometimes I think, well, I'm not going to put this in the form because I'm going to get a faster response from Facebook. And then you have issues.
There is that risk, but
So I think there needs to be a single message. Like I know some places where they say this is where you get score and that's where you get score. Should be more place with facts or
it does get frustrating when you get people that post in all the channels at the same time. And
That's right. When we see that, we do actually tend to contact them and say, please don't do this.
And I didn't even know that.
For me, Facebook isn't nearly as much of a problem as the personal requests. the comedy, I wake up in the morning and there's 9 new Skype personal requests and 6 on GitHub. And I'm often typing the same thing, you know, please make this sort of request on a public forum, suggest this one, please make this request, and I'm just doing the same thing to each of them because I like my answers to be archived publicly.
I respond with, where do I send my
Yeah, it depends. I sort of tailor it a bit to them. The personal request is the part that takes some time. I don't just mean you, Daryl.
Right, we might just keep moving forward because based on the time, I'm going to try to wrap this up in 10 minutes and basically just give myself some homework to tidy it all up based on the discussion because Randy and Tridge want to do a wrap up and I think some people have got flights to catch and that kind of thing. I think the message to take for that last one though is please, when you're responding to things on whatever forum they're on, even though it can be frustrating, please be polite, even if people aren't being polite to you, because it does reflect on all of us. And I'm as guilty of snapping back at people as anyone else, but we do need to just be conscious of it.
On the discussion one, was that primarily other users being unfriendly, us, or everybody?
It's more about us responding and...
Okay, no, that's good feedback. Worth knowing.
The tuning scale.
Questions don't get answered.
I know.
I think certain people need to be ringed in a little more than others, rather than their names.
Tom. Tuning scale. We can probably discuss the tuning. So that's really just how that's presented, because we can translate that any way you want to, really. But terminology and settings, complexity, documentation.
So James, what did you say about the tuning scale?
No, it's inconsistent in the parameters. Like some parameters have to go from 0.00 something, other parameters start at around about 1.
Yeah, and I'll just, that is something we could probably change from a user interface without actually touching the internal maths, so just translate it on the way in, but it's
tricky then, because then I tell them what the parameter should be, and they see a different interface. And then if the ground station presents it as a different number, then I could be giving them bad advice from the point of view of what they see in the UI. That's, we have lost a couple of aircraft with 70 degrees versus degrees maximum bank angle.
No, I would actually disagree on tuning scale is inconsistent in parameter 0.02 and 0.8 versus 0. That's what those numbers are. There's no inconsistency.
Units associated with them.
I think the word.
What's
Maybe
that?
maybe a better way to phrase it is to show what the numbers are relative to standard maximum minimum.
There is no standard maximum minimum. They're and this is there is a certain level of requirement of educated user. If you're too stupid to understand it, get somebody else to do it.
So Leonard, we'll just refer back to the previous discussion.
There is a simple.
You want him to admin of the forums?
But there is you're required an educated user. If you're doing tuning, you're dealing with something that can hurt you or others. And if you're not, if you are uncomfortable with checking your work and understanding the difference between 1 and 0.01, or if you are cavalier about that process, you are going to lose an eye, or somebody else is going to lose an eye. And people need to understand the safety issues that you know. It's a serious business.
Maybe we jumping to conclusions about the solution here. Rather than changing the numbers, maybe it's a documentation issue, maybe it's an education issue, maybe it's a tutorial that can be done.
Which links into the next item on the list, which is terminology, settings, complexity. There's I think there's general agreement that we need to put some focus towards the documentation. Whether or not we can reduce the complexity of complex systems that would be quite another.
Well, you can, but you also reduce the performance of those systems too.
Well, we're talking about the description of the systems, making it easy to understand.
I want to go back
to
a specific point. It's agree with Leonard that you need to have that level of finesse and know what you're doing, but I've messed up because I've gone through so many iterations of tuning that I've gone back and forth across scales and then messed that up against another one I've been changing and I'm just putting the wrong figure.
Yeah.
I've got being out by a decimal point, but if you had a reference of what you did before on the very previous tuning action to say
Well, that's the sort of things where that is a valid thing. Is you've changed this by more than 50%. You know. Yeah, but that's a valid check, right? You know, and ground stations can do that and say, but relative to your previous thing, because one of the problems is these big aircraft I tune are pretty much always outside of the normal recommended ranges, and I'm faced with the decision: do I increase that range? Because the range that I put on, like you just sort of going some number between 0 and infinity, you know, the range, you know, there's like 2 orders of magnitude in tuning ranges that we see, based on the size of the copy you get. So it's quite, even going, like scaling that relative to anything. So scaling it compared to your previous thing would be an awesome way to improve the safety of that tuning practice. Having up and down buttons relative to your current value is a great way of doing that.
And also just having some profiles to get started. Like a lot of people start and they can't auto-tune because they can't even fly in the first place. It'd be nice if there was like some basic PIDs that are just on a tiny, small, medium, just like by weight or something.
I get that.
actually describe that.
I get that question a lot, and again, it's really difficult because based on the ESC type you're using, the response rate, the distribution of your inertia and your airframe.
Sure, but it gets you flying, so you can do it.
No, my point is
But
that
how does someone get from being stupid to not stupid?
well, that's where off-the-shelf systems come in. Have a
But they don't learn anything, right? So if they're working, when you get them, and you can chip up and down by 50%, 100%. I don't know. It's not.
But this is where the old 3DR multi-rate came in. You know, defaults for it. You know, the defaults sort of sit around a particular airframe type, which is 10-inch range, standard DSC, blah blah blah. But that's where like the little 250s are fantastic because they're all pretty much the same. They're all running pretty well BL heli or a similarly performance ESC.
ESC, I heard.
No, but the ESC performances are all very similar. So you can pretty much take any 250 and start out with a similar tune and get a similar response. And all those aircraft are really similar. What we deal with is anything from bloody 200 gram things up to 200 kilogram things, with massively different power to weight ratios. So some big aircraft are flying at like 50% hover when they take off with this little payload, and that's their normal state. The aircraft I fly, take off at like 12-15% hover throttle, because they've got such a massive payload range. Those two aircraft are very different, even though they look identical.
Is it possible then to have two simple sliders? I'm just hypothesizing. One that says power and one that says weight.
You mean RC field?
No, not at all. RC field is an input shaping parameter.
But that's the thing. But you got to tune it properly in the first place. Then you add the field. If you've got that tuning right, is what you're talking about.
We might just move on, but I think it's
come up with just that.
probably a topic that's
based on a simple lookup table.
They should all just hire you to tune it.
Or follow the wiki on how to take off safely for the first time. And maybe we could do a better job on explaining that. But that first takeoff is the single scariest flight of any aircraft I do.
So I think tuning is something that comes up every year, both as something that ArduPilot does pretty well with auto tuning.
Last takeoff ain't so hot either.
That's the landing that's the problem.
Anyway, so auto tuning is something that I think most people think ArduPilot does pretty well, but manually tuning is a complex process. Simplifying tuning is why auto tuning is there. I don't.
It's really hard.
But
to take
we'll move
that
on to the next. Just to keep moving through this, I've got 4 minutes left before I hand over. That complexity links into one of the other topics that's down here. Differentiation between hobbyists and professional users, brackets, vendors. I don't know whether professional users / brackets vendors is the right.
I think the conversation.
Yeah, it goes back to what we were just talking about there. When stuff is outside of range, or it's high performance, or high consequence, whether it's financial or personal, like where does it stop being a hobby and when does it start becoming professional, and what people do you talk to about that? What is normal? I mean, if you talk to a hobby user about advice, you'll get, no, just do this, this, and this. You do that, one of the copies that I do, it comes back in your face.
Yeah.
So.
It's a very valid question. I don't know how we really manage that as a project, but it's probably something we can discuss during the partners call, perhaps.
Let's not even specific. particularly partners, because some of the people that I would recommend people to, I'm not sure they are necessarily partners. If someone's got a new big vehicle, I tell them to all in it. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
Do you warn them about the stupid issue?
Right, just to keep moving through, CAN, I think that's just general agreement from our hardware vendors that they're pushing CAN, which is good. That's consistency between the devs and on both the hardware and software devs pushing towards CAN. That's good. Sophistication in helicopter, like in multicopter. I might skip over that for now, if that's okay. True redundancy, multiple controllers. True redundancies is an interesting question.
I think
There's reliability and redundancy aren't necessarily equivalent.
Correct.
I think also there's a perception in the market that since the A3 existed, that there's a redundant flight controller that is actually got the same number of IMUs and processor as a Q. We don't claim that is a redundant flight controller, it's got redundant IMUs.
So that's come back in my face many times about trying to sell a vehicle. They're like, oh, you don't have a redundant system, we don't want it. We need a redundant system, and they don't know that
the DJI just put it in two different boxes rather than one cube.
Sounds like you need to be a better salesperson.
Righto. RD Rockets, I said I wasn't going to delete anything, so I won't, but I'd really rather that wasn't there.
Yeah, I don't think we can do that. We've talked about that before.
Yeah, regulatory.
There are actually rules
about
about
navigation. Yeah, that'll be marvelous.
I
didn't make any promises. I just deleted this.
Right. We do have a code of conduct as a team. We can, if anyone wants to review that code of conduct, then obviously, as a team we can discuss it. But I think it makes things pretty clear about where our boundaries are.
What's the premise? All devices must be able to come home. That's
No.
Sorry, I don't mean to.
Weaponization is the boundary. So
Read the code of conduct.
yeah, it's on the website. Closed loop control for motos. That's kind of linked into FOC as well, because to do FOC properly you need feedback.
Not just that, also for RPM feedback in plane for forward motor.
That's also something that was in last year's, probably slightly differently worded, but
once you get feedback from all these systems, I really just want the redundancy, or not redundancy, but failure.
Bidirectional D
Hey, my motor's
shots.
not spinning, let's do it fairly safe.
Yeah.
We almost have that now with Modulator. We actually do
support for fuel systems. That's started. That's work in progress. You can actually feed most of the data in already.
The fuel systems, yes, that started first PRs in. We'll support more of them, but we've got one supported now.
But you can already feed the data in it just as an analog sensor.
You can, but it'll now actually estimate your fuel remaining and things. Yeah. It'll do that now.
Actually, battery remaining, is that because of destination? I mean, you see it as a...
Michael's got to answer that properly.
Not really. We'll count milliamp hours for you, but if your milliamps go off your crazy scales, it doesn't work.
Well, even that estimated flight time remaining.
Yeah, so there is actually there's quite a lengthy PR, 2 PRs in that I think Matt was working on at one point.
Yes, those are.
Yeah.
I think those went the wrong way for it because they require a lot of user input. I mean, really, you should be able to monitor your current power draw, which gives you an estimation of time to run.
Yeah.
And that's how I think that should be done. The PRs from Matt required you to manually put in what you think your hover current is, your climb current, your descent current.
And
is not the way I
but
want
we
to support.
observe a bunch of that.
Wind. Yeah, that's just.
So we should be able to do this nicely, but it does require us to do it as a learning thing rather than user input
Is that
parameters.
an overtune parameter?
No, just like learning what during flight. It's like the impedance of batteries.
Smart batteries all do this automatically for you.
Yeah.
So basically go based on your last 5 minutes
Yeah.
consumption, we'll be dead this long. So that's the same thing about bringing.
Right, so I'm going to stop there and basically take on the job of cleaning the list up, distributing it out to the list of people who are here and the broader dev team to wrap that up, and that'll go out via email to the dev team so that we can, I guess, agree on that and get the names to task for what people want to take on, and I'll hand over to Randy and Tridge to perhaps wrap up.
I just added I wanted to mention increased benefits becoming a partner. Right now it's kind of fluff.
So
Partners don't quite let you get much.
the Partners program, I think, has been one of the great success stories with ArduPilot, actually, from sort of floating as an idea a few years back, and we've now got, I think we've reached 60 partners. So partners are coming back. It sometimes takes a while to get them to pay the renewal, but we usually get there with most renewing, and I think we've doubled the number of partners in the last year, perhaps,
Pretty close.
something like that, 30, 60, I think. So that's been a success. We have started a new system with the monthly partners call that is hosted by Randy and myself primarily, but with other people, greatly appreciate assistance from many others. We often don't get very many partners turning up, which is understandable with time zones, etc. But we've started now recording those calls and making the recording available to all partners as a YouTube video with the slides synchronized. And greatly appreciate the time that James and Louis and others have put into creating those videos. That gets it out to a broader audience. We are considering the possibility that those videos then might be available with a time delay to everyone, because there's often some really good discussions that happen during those calls. But the monthly calls have also been useful. I find them useful for myself, just summarizing what's happened in the last month, because I look through all the commits and things and realize we've actually got a whole lot done there, and it gives us what we've done just here today. We're getting something like that each month as we summarize, and we put that summary up as a blog post each month. And that's actually been very useful for thinking about what to try to get done in the next month and the next month. And it's helped pace things along. It's been terribly useful, I think. So I do realize that, trying to give good value to partners while not being too exclusive, because the project as a whole wants to make things available to as broad a range of people as possible. And so giving exclusive benefits to partners is somewhat contrary to the philosophy of the project. But at the same time, we would love to encourage partners. The other big benefit, when partners join ArduPilot, a lot of the benefit is actually the interaction with the partners. And where a partner then, I often spend several hours on the phone to a new partner, going through some of their past logs, analysing the way they're using it, looking at their pain points, how to improve it. That conversation is often very valuable for the partner, but also very valuable for the project. A lot of new features that have come in the last year have happened as a result of those partner introduction calls. And any partner here is welcome to request another one of those types of calls. If they haven't had one already, if they want just another one, feel free. Say, I'd like to have another overview, look into our practices, see how we can improve, particularly explaining your pain points. What makes your life harder than it should be, right? What is difficult? It's really hard to download logs. They take too long. I'm finding it's hard to do this analysis. I'm finding that it's hard to do this planning, whatever. Those is really, really useful feedback, and often it takes an extended conversation to tease that out. So feel free to come to us during the year and say, I'm a partner, I'd like to have a call with you guys and go through what we're doing and how the project what changes could be made in either our practices or what the project does to improve the use case. A great one is many partners don't know about, for example, the APJ system for customizing, creating custom firmware with your default parameters for your vehicle. Incredibly valuable for a certain class of company developing firmware for particular vehicles, and people just don't know it even exists. How many in the room don't know what an APJ editor is? Yeah, a number of people. Yeah, so it's something that you should learn about to create customized firmwares, and we're willing to create things like that. All right, so waffling on a bit. So thank you all so much for coming. It's been really, really great. As I said, at the opening of this whole conference, part of the aim is just to grease the wheels for the rest of the year by having the personal interaction, knowing people. It's often easier to work with somebody remotely if you've had a chat with them over a cup of tea or a beer, or you've gone and been on the flight line with them for a few minutes and you get to know them a little bit. That's from my point of view, it's really, really valuable. I greatly appreciate that. And I love meeting you all. It's great fun meeting all the, flying robot geeks, getting them all in the room. So this afternoon, we were expecting rain, and it hasn't turned up, which there's a little bit of wind, but it's not too bad. Nothing that a Bixler can't handle. So for what we actually do, next, I think I'll probably go out to CMAC and do some more flying and things. We were going to do the Lightning Sunday talks. Yes, we should give opportunity for those. But I'd also just like to, right now, thank all the people who helped make this event happen. Enormous amount of effort by Grant. Please stand up, Grant, at the back there. Jack Pitter, yes. Thank you very much for all your efforts. There's a lot of things behind the scenes. James has done an enormous amount of effort behind the scenes in helping get things ready. Louis, who isn't even here, has been doing the editing of the videos you're going to see coming out. And there's something like 200 gigabytes of audio and video that he's going to be working on editing. So many, many thanks to Louis. He is listening. He's got the audio here. So thank you, Louis. Thank you to everyone else who's contributed. Jack just pointed out that the money box up the back there is still got more room in it. Please feel free to fill it. There's also a PayPal address there to cover the food. We're experimenting a bit this year with this system of not having strict payment for each meal, and it'd be great if we could cover some of these costs.